Dr. King looked out at the horizon, her mind racing. She knew they had stumbled upon something ancient, something powerful. But what would they do with it? What was Earth hiding? The team gathered around, unsure of what the next steps should be. But one thing was clear. The discovery of the first record was only the beginning of a story far more complex and terrifying than they could have imagined. And the message, "Never wake Earth," would be the shadow that loomed over everything they did from that point forward. After the initial discovery, the excitement and shock still lingered in the air. Dr. Elara King and her team couldn't shake the haunting message they had uncovered, "Never wake Earth." The words echoed in their minds as they gathered in the command center of their research base, unsure of what to do next. As days passed, they continued to study the mysterious box and its strange, otherworldly technology. Every scientist, every engineer, every linguist on the team tried to decode the cryptic symbols, but it was as if they were staring at an impenetrable puzzle. Dr. King stood before the display screen, her fingers lightly tapping the edges of the console. The messages continued to repeat over and over again, each more urgent and ominous than the last. The alien civilization had left more than just the warning. They had left a record, a fragmented piece of their history. But what did it mean for Earth? The team had managed to decipher a few more symbols, revealing fragmented stories. The aliens who had once inhabited an entire galaxy had recorded their demise. And in every message, Earth was mentioned, always in the same way, a warning, a cautionary tale. Dr. King glanced at her colleague, Professor Jacob Doon, who was busy typing on his console. His eyes were narrowed, deep in concentration. "We've made progress," Jacob said, breaking the silence. "The symbols on this device aren't just a language. They're a map, a guide. It's pointing to something." "Something connected to Earth?" Dr. King asked, her heart racing. She had a feeling she knew where this was going. Jacob nodded, turning to face her. "Yes. The coordinates in these ancient texts match a location in our solar system. Not far from Earth, but close enough that it raises questions. This could be the source of the warning." The entire team gathered around Jacob's workstation, each person eager to learn more. The coordinates led to a region of space that had long been ignored, a place where only a few ships had dared to venture. It was a quiet, unexplored corner, often overlooked in favor of more habitable or resource-rich regions. Dr. King felt a chill run down her spine. Why had the aliens left this message, and why was Earth mentioned? What lay at this mysterious location that had caused civilizations to crumble? She knew they had to go there. Within hours, a plan was in motion. The team prepared their best exploration vessel, a sleek, high-tech starship capable of reaching distant points in the galaxy. The mission was clear: investigate the coordinates, uncover the source of the warning, and understand what had terrified these ancient civilizations enough to issue such a dire caution. The ship's launch was smooth, and soon they were on their way, leaving behind the familiar comforts of the research base and heading into the unknown. As the starship hurtled through space, Dr. King sat alone in the observation deck, staring out at the stars. Her thoughts were consumed with the message, "Never wake Earth." What did it mean? How was Earth connected to the fall of these once great civilizations? Her mind wandered to her childhood, to Earth, her home, and how peaceful and safe it had always seemed. But now, after this discovery, it felt like the very ground beneath her feet had been shaken. Could Earth really be the cause of some cosmic catastrophe? Could humanity's existence itself be tied to a chain of events that would lead to the destruction of other civilizations? The silence of space was almost overwhelming, and the vast emptiness felt heavier than ever before. She closed her eyes, trying to process everything. The enormity of the situation began to sink in. Whatever lay ahead, whatever secret this journey uncovered, it would change everything. The fate of Earth might be at stake. Hours turned into days as the ship traveled deeper into the unknown. Dr. King and her team worked tirelessly, analyzing the data they had collected and preparing for what they might find. Every star they passed, every unknown planet they encountered, seemed to hold a potential clue. Finally, they arrived at the coordinates, a barren planet located in a desolate part of the galaxy. The place looked lifeless, its surface scarred and rocky. Nothing seemed to be there, no sign of life or activity. Yet, the strange feeling of foreboding persisted. Dr. King stood at the front of the ship, looking out at the planet below. There was no obvious sign of civilization, no towering cities, no abandoned structures. Yet she couldn't shake the feeling that something ancient, something powerful, was buried beneath the surface. "We're here," Dr. King said, her voice filled with a mix of determination and unease. The team began their descent, and as the ship's landing gear touched down on the cold, rocky ground, the feeling that they were being watched settled over them. It was an unsettling sensation, one that none of them could shake. As they disembarked and stepped onto the surface, they began their search. The planet seemed empty, desolate, and quiet. But the faint hum of technology, deep beneath the surface, made their hearts race. The team used ground scanners and excavation tools to dig deeper into the planet's crust. They had to know what was hidden below, what secrets this dead world held. As the days passed, they began to uncover something extraordinary, an underground facility built with technology far beyond their own. The walls were covered with the same strange symbols they had seen on the box, and in the center of the facility, they found a large sealed chamber, a chamber that, when opened, revealed a second, much more detailed record. Dr. Kane's heart skipped a beat as she saw the new message, a message that seemed to be clearer, more urgent than the last. "Do not disturb the Earth. It is not yours to awaken. Leave it alone." The warning had escalated. Whoever had left this message had known that Earth would one day be the key to something far greater than the civilizations of the past had ever understood. And the message was clear. Earth held a terrible power, a power that, if awakened, could destroy everything. The tension among the team had become palpable. Each moment felt heavier, as the chilling message they had uncovered continued to reverberate in their minds. "Do not disturb the Earth. It is not yours to awaken. Leave it alone." The words seemed like a curse, warning them of something far more powerful than they had initially imagined. Dr. Elara King couldn't shake the feeling that they had stumbled upon something far bigger than their original mission. The messages had been cryptic, but they were now starting to form a pattern that seemed to point to Earth as the focal point. The dead civilizations that had left these messages were all connected by one universal truth. Earth was not just a planet. It was a key to something much, much larger. "Why Earth?" Jacob Dune, the linguist on the team, asked as they huddled together in the darkened command center of their ship. The stars outside seemed cold and distant, as if even the cosmos itself was watching them. Dr. King turned to him, her brow furrowed with both confusion and fear. "That's what we need to figure out. But I have a feeling we're not going to like what we find." The team had already begun the arduous process of analyzing the new records they had uncovered. The underground facility on the barren planet had yielded more than just a single message. The walls of the chamber were covered with ancient symbols, symbols that, when decoded, hinted at a terrifying history. The dead civilizations that had once thrived in the galaxy had all been wiped out by something. But what had caused their downfall? As the days passed, Dr. King couldn't stop thinking about the implications of their discovery. They had been sent on this mission to study alien records, but now it felt like they had uncovered something far more sinister. "This is no longer just archaeology," she said to the team one evening as they sat around the central table. "This is about survival. Ours, and the survival of every living thing in the galaxy." Jacob looked up from his data pad, his expression grim. "I've been analyzing the records from the chamber. The civilizations weren't wiped out by natural disasters. They weren't defeated in war. They were destroyed by something they didn't fully understand. And that something is Earth." The words sent a chill down Dr. King's spine. Earth. The planet they all called home. The planet that seemed so small, so insignificant in the grand scheme of things. Jacob continued, his voice lowering. The records mention something about a power slumbering beneath the surface. It's clear that Earth holds something, some kind of force or energy, that these civilizations feared. A stunned silence filled the room. Dr. King felt her pulse quicken. She had long suspected that Earth held more secrets than humanity could ever understand. But to think that ancient civilizations had feared something buried beneath the planet's surface, it was almost too much to comprehend. She stood up from the table, pacing the small space. Could it be some kind of weapon? A dormant technology? It's possible, Jacob replied, but his tone didn't sound convinced. The records hint at a force, but they don't explain it fully. It's not just a weapon, it's something more. Ancient. Something that could end everything. The rest of the team was deep in thought, absorbing the gravity of the situation. But Dr. King knew they couldn't sit idly by. They had to act. If the warning was real, if Earth truly held the key to something so destructive, then the galaxy was in grave danger. "We need to return to Earth," she finally said, breaking the silence. "We need to investigate what's beneath the surface, find out what these civilizations were so terrified of." The decision was made quickly. They could not afford to delay. The unknown force that lay beneath Earth's surface needed to be uncovered, before someone else did, before it was too late. The journey back to Earth felt different now. The quiet hum of the ship, the calmness of space, now felt suffocating. Each team member was lost in their thoughts, knowing they were on the brink of discovering something world-changing. But none of them could shake the feeling that what they were about to uncover would change everything forever. As the ship approached Earth's orbit, Dr. King felt the weight of the mission bear down on her. She had always considered herself a scientist, an explorer, someone who searched for truth. But now she wasn't just searching for knowledge, she was searching for survival. The entire planet's future, and perhaps the fate of the galaxy, rested on what they would find. Landing in 5 minutes, came the calm voice of the pilot. "Prepare for descent." Dr. King nodded, her mind racing. What lay beneath Earth's surface? What ancient power had caused civilizations to crumble? And could humanity, with all its technological advancements, survive it? As the ship began its descent into Earth's atmosphere, the team gathered their gear and prepared to make history. They were about to uncover secrets that had been buried for millennia. Secrets that could either save or destroy them all. The landscape below them looked peaceful, familiar even, but Dr. King knew better now. Nothing was what it seemed, and the true mystery of Earth was only beginning to unfold. As the ship descended toward Earth's surface, the team could feel the weight of history pressing in on them. Every inch of their descent seemed to carry them deeper into the unknown, into a world that had once been their home, but now felt like a distant stranger. Dr. Elara King stood by the observation window, her eyes scanning the blue planet below. It seemed so peaceful from up here, so ordinary, but she knew better now. There was something buried beneath the surface, something ancient and terrifying, and Earth's history had been rewritten by those who had come before them. Approaching landing site, the pilot's voice crackled over the intercom. "Prepare for touchdown." Elara's heart raced as the ship lowered through Earth's atmosphere, the once familiar sights of cities and oceans now feeling foreign, as if she were seeing them for the first time. The gentle vibrations of the ship as it touched down were a stark contrast to the storm brewing in her mind. She could almost hear the dead civilization's warnings echoing in her thoughts. "Do not disturb Earth. It is not yours to awaken." As the landing gear made contact with the soil, the team quickly unstrapped themselves and gathered their gear. The moment had arrived. It was time to uncover Earth's buried secret. The team filed out of the ship and onto the barren ground, stepping into the dusty landscape that surrounded their landing site. The air was thick with tension, each step feeling like they were walking toward something inevitable. Elara looked around at the desolate terrain. There were no signs of life here. No animals, no plants, just dust and rock. But beneath the earth, something pulsed, something waiting to be uncovered. "We're not alone here," Jacob Dune said quietly as he surveyed the surroundings. "There's something down there. I can feel it." Ilara nodded in agreement. There was a strange energy in the air, something they couldn't quite explain, but it was undeniable. They were close now. The coordinates from the alien records had led them to this remote location, deep in an uncharted part of Earth. The underground facility they were looking for was only a few miles away. "Let's move," Ilara ordered. "The sooner we find it, the sooner we can understand what's happening here." The team moved quickly, carefully making their way through the barren landscape. They had to stay on alert. They didn't know what they might encounter down here. The air was thick with silence, broken only by the crunch of their boots on the rocky ground. Hours passed, and the landscape grew even more desolate as they neared the entrance to the facility. They came upon a narrow valley, flanked by towering cliffs. At the end of the valley, hidden in the shadows, was a large metallic structure half buried in the earth. It looked like a massive door, weathered and ancient, with strange symbols etched into its surface. "This is it," Ilara said, her voice filled with awe. "We found it." The team gathered around the entrance, examining the markings that adorned the door. The symbols were similar to the ones they had uncovered in the alien records. There was no mistaking it now. The dead civilizations had left these warnings for a reason. Jacob stepped forward, his hands trembling as he ran his fingers over the symbols. "These markings, they're not just warnings. They're instructions. This door, it's meant to be opened." The realization sent a wave of excitement and dread through the group. What would they find behind that door? Was it a weapon, as they had feared? Or was it something even more dangerous, something that could shatter everything they knew about Earth and its place in the universe? "We need to open it," Ilara said, determination in her voice. "Whatever's inside, we need to know what it is. The galaxy's fate depends on it." The team quickly set to work, using their advanced technology to decode the symbols and unlock the entrance. The process took several hours, but finally, with a resounding click, the massive door began to open. A blast of cold air escaped from the dark depths beyond, sending a shiver through the group. "What's down there?" Jacob asked, his voice tinged with fear. "We're about to find out," Ilara replied, her heart pounding in her chest. As the door creaked open, a deep, foreboding darkness stretched out before them. There was no telling what lay beyond, but Ilara felt an overwhelming sense of both wonder and fear. This was the moment when they would uncover the truth about Earth's dark secret. The team stepped inside, their flashlights cutting through the dark, illuminating the cold, metallic walls that surrounded them. The air was thick with dust, and the smell of age and decay filled their noses. It was clear that this place had been untouched for millennia. They moved deeper into the facility, their footsteps echoing in the silent halls. As they ventured further, they came across strange machinery, machines that hummed with a faint energy, as though they were waiting for something, for a signal. Ilara stopped in her tracks, her eyes widening. Ahead of them, on a pedestal in the center of the chamber, was an object unlike anything they had ever seen. It was small, spherical, glowing with an eerie light, and as Ilara approached it, she felt a strange pull, as though the object were calling to her. This is it," Jacob whispered, his voice filled with awe. "This is the source." The object was more than just a relic. It was the key, the very thing that had driven the dead civilizations to abandon everything, to warn the galaxy. It was the power beneath Earth's surface, and now they were standing on the brink of uncovering its true nature. Ilara reached out, her hand trembling as she touched the glowing sphere. And in that instant, everything changed. The room seemed to pulse with energy, and a voice, distant, ancient, whispered in her mind, "Do not wake the Earth. It is not yours to awaken." The warning had come too late. The sphere hummed louder in Ilara's hand, its light growing more intense. A strange energy surged through her, a mixture of fear, awe, and something else, something ancient. It was as though the very core of Earth had responded to her touch, stirring from its long-forgotten slumber. The warnings, the records, the haunting message from the dead civilizations, all of it seemed to converge in this moment. Ilara, pull back. Jacob's voice was urgent, filled with a sense of dread. He was standing a few steps away, watching her with wide eyes. Something's happening. But it was too late. The moment Ilara made contact with the sphere, a blinding flash of light erupted from the object, enveloping the entire room in a pulse of energy. The ground beneath them trembled, and the walls of the facility seemed to groan, as if the entire structure was awakening from a deep, long slumber. The team staggered back, their bodies reeling from the surge of energy. Ilara barely managed to keep her grip on the sphere as it pulsed faster, more violently, in her hand. "What's going on?" Dr. Misha Verne, the team's scientist, gasped, her voice trembling with fear. This wasn't in any of the records. The technology. It's not like anything we've seen. Ilara couldn't answer. Her mind was consumed by the strange energy flowing through her, connecting her to something deep beneath the Earth's surface. It was as if she could hear a voice, faint but growing louder, reverberating through her bones. "You should not have come. The Earth is not yours to awaken. Leave now or face the consequences." The voice was like a whisper, but it wasn't just a voice. It was a feeling, an overwhelming presence that seemed to be seeping into her very soul. She staggered back, clutching the sphere tighter. Her hands shook, and her chest felt tight, as though the weight of the universe itself were pressing down on her. "We need to leave. Now," Jacob said, his voice shaking as he grabbed Ilara by the arm, pulling her away from the pedestal. The rest of the team quickly followed, panic rising in their voices. But as they turned to leave, the ground beneath their feet cracked with a deafening roar. The walls around them shuddered, and the lights flickered, plunging them into darkness for a moment. Then, a low, rumbling sound filled the air, vibrating through the very earth beneath their feet. A blast of air shot out from the deep tunnels, carrying with it a dust storm that momentarily blinded them. The sound of grinding metal and shifting earth echoed through the corridors, and the team could feel the temperature drop, as though the very air itself had turned cold with fear. "There's no way out," Dr. Misha said in a panic-stricken voice. "The facility is locking down. We triggered something." Ilara's heart raced. They were trapped. The ground trembled again, and the walls shook with a deafening force. It was as if the entire world was coming to life, reacting to their presence. The once still and silent chambers of the ancient facility now hummed with a terrifying power, and the team had no way of knowing what would happen next. Suddenly, the whispers began again, louder this time, almost deafening in their intensity. "You have disturbed the slumber of Earth. You are the first, but not the last. The world has been waiting. Now it will awaken." The walls of the facility began to crack, and a deep rumbling filled the air. Ilara's heart raced as she realized the true meaning of the warning. The Earth wasn't just a place, it was alive, a sentient being with a will of its own, and it was angry. Angry that they had dared to disturb its peace, angry that they had tried to uncover its secrets. "Get out. Now!" Ilara screamed, but even as she shouted, the doors to the chamber slammed shut, trapping them inside. The energy in the room intensified, growing unbearable, and the floor beneath them seemed to sink, as though the entire facility was being swallowed by the earth itself. The team turned in panic, trying desperately to find another way out, but it was too late. The facility was alive with energy, pulsing and vibrating, and the air felt thick with the power of something ancient, something powerful. The walls trembled again, and suddenly, a deep, resonant voice filled the chamber, seeming to come from all directions at once. "You have awoken Earth. Prepare for what comes next." The temperature in the room plummeted, and the ground beneath their feet cracked open, sending a wave of dark energy surging through the facility. The team was thrown to the ground by the force of the blast, and everything went black. When Ilara regained consciousness, she found herself lying on the cold, rocky ground. Her head ached, and her vision was blurry. As she tried to sit up, the reality of the situation hit her. The walls of the facility were now nothing more than rubble, and the ground had cracked wide open. The world outside had changed, and she had no idea what kind of horrors they had unleashed. She quickly scanned the area. Her team was scattered around the room, groaning and struggling to their feet. Jacob was the first to stand, his eyes wide with terror. "Ilara," he gasped, his voice filled with disbelief. "What did we do? The Earth, it's alive. It's changing. And it's not just here, it's everywhere." Ilara's heart sank. She realized with a cold, sinking feeling that they hadn't just awoken an ancient facility, they had awakened Earth itself. The planet was alive, and now it was angry, and nothing would ever be the same again. The ground shook violently as the team struggled to their feet. Ilara's head was still spinning, the remnants of the blinding flash and the crushing wave of energy still echoing in her mind. Every bone in her body seemed to ache from the impact, but she pushed through it, her gaze fixed on the cracked and broken walls around them. The facility was in ruins, half of it swallowed by the Earth itself, and a strange, unnatural silence hung in the air, broken only by the distant rumbling sound beneath them. Jacob was the first to speak, his voice tremulous but urgent. "We need to get out of here. Now. The Earth, it's waking up. We've triggered something, and I don't think we can stop it." Ilara's eyes narrowed. He was right. The very ground beneath them felt different, alive, almost. The Earth was no longer just a planet. It was a conscious entity, and it was angry. They had come seeking answers, but now they were the ones facing the consequences. The team gathered quickly, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Misha, the scientist, was on her knees, staring at the ground, muttering to herself as she tried to make sense of the strange vibrations still rippling through the Earth. The records, they were right. All the records we uncovered spoke of an entity, a presence beneath the surface. But I didn't think it was real. It was just a myth. Ilara glanced at the others, their faces pale with fear. They had all read the same records. They had all seen the same warnings, but none of them had fully believed it. Now it was too late. The Earth had awoken, and they had no idea what it would do next. Suddenly, a tremor shot through the ground, and the air grew thick with an unnatural energy. The Earth beneath them groaned as if it were stretching and waking up from a long slumber, and in the distance, something began to shift. The world was changing in ways they couldn't comprehend. "Ilara, look," Jacob shouted, his voice filled with horror. She followed his gaze to the horizon. In the distance, massive cracks had begun to form in the Earth, snaking their way across the landscape. The sky above had turned a strange, unnatural shade of red, casting a sickly glow over the ruined facility. "It's not just here," Ilara said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The Earth's changing. It's happening everywhere." The team stood in stunned silence as the landscape around them shifted. The once solid ground seemed to pulse with life, moving in ways that defied explanation. Giant fissures cracked open across the Earth, and from within them, strange, glowing tendrils of energy began to emerge, snaking up into the sky like roots of an enormous tree. It was as though the planet itself was alive and breathing. Misha's voice broke the silence. "We need to find shelter. Whatever this is, it's not safe. We don't know what kind of power we've unleashed." Ilara nodded. "We can't stay here. The records mention something about a core deep beneath the surface. We need to get to it. It might be the only place that can stop this." The team quickly moved out, their every step carefully measured as they made their way toward the edge of the ruined facility. But with each step, the Earth seemed to grow more unstable, as if reacting to their movements. The ground cracked beneath their feet, sending dust and debris flying into the air. A deep guttural sound vibrated from below them, sending shivers down their spines. "Ilara," Jacob said, his voice strained with urgency. "What if we can't stop it? What if the Earth's already too far gone?" Ilara didn't have an answer. The records had been clear. Once the Earth awoke, there was no going back. They had no way of knowing just how far this awakening would go. They could only hope that they could reach the heart of the power, the core, that might still hold the key to stopping whatever it was the planet had become. As they approached the edge of the facility, the rumbling grew louder. The ground beneath their feet seemed to grow even more unstable, the cracks spreading faster, deeper. Then, without warning, the Earth split wide open, sending a surge of energy blasting toward them. The team was thrown off their feet, and for a moment, everything went dark. When Ilara came to, she found herself lying on her back, staring up at the sky. The air was thick with dust, and the ground felt wrong. There was an energy in the air, a crackling, oppressive force that made her skin tingle. She tried to sit up but was overcome with dizziness. Her head was pounding, and the world around her seemed to be tilting. "Ilara, are you okay?" Jacob's voice called from somewhere nearby. She struggled to her feet, her knees buckling for a moment before she steadied herself. "Yeah, I think so," she said, her voice shaky. "But something's wrong. It's not just the facility. The Earth, it's changing." Jacob was beside her now, helping her stand. His face was pale, his eyes wide with fear. "Look at the horizon." Ilara turned, and her stomach churned. The once blue sky had turned a sickly greenish hue, and the horizon was filled with twisting, glowing energy tendrils rising from the Earth. The land around them was a twisted landscape of cracks and glowing fissures, pulsating with an unnatural energy. "This is it," Misha said, her voice hoarse. "The Earth is awake, and it's going to change everything. We've only just begun to understand what we've unleashed." Ilara knew she was right. They had awakened something that should never have been disturbed. The Earth was not just a planet. It was a living, breathing entity, and now they had to face the consequences. But what if there was no way to stop it? What if Earth was already too far gone? The world around them continued to change, its power growing stronger by the minute, and Ilara knew they had only one chance to stop it. They had to reach the core, where it all began, and somehow find a way to shut it down before it was too late. With no time to waste, Ilara turned toward the glowing fissures in the distance, the path to the heart of the planet. The team followed, knowing that the fate of Earth, and perhaps the entire universe, was in their hands. The journey to the core of the Earth had taken longer than they had anticipated. With each step, the world around them became more unrecognizable. The once familiar landscape was now a war zone of jagged rocks, glowing cracks in the earth, and an atmosphere that hummed with a strange, unnatural energy. It felt as though the planet itself was alive and watching them. Every sound, every tremor, every shift of the earth seemed like a warning that they were trespassing on something ancient, something far beyond their understanding. The team, weary from the journey and the constant tremors, moved forward in silence. Ilara could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her. They were about to face the heart of this awakening, the very source of the planet's fury, and she wasn't sure if they could stop it. But she knew they had no choice. The fate of Earth, of everything they knew, depended on what happened next. "Ilara, look," Misha said, pointing ahead. It's the core." Ahead of them, a massive chasm stretched deep into the earth, glowing with an eerie, pulsating light. From its depths, tendrils of energy spiraled upward, filling the sky with a glowing, unnatural hue. The air was thick with power, a raw, primal force that seemed to vibrate in Ilara's chest. It was the heart of Earth, the source of its awakening. "This is it," Ilara said, her voice barely a whisper. "We've made it." But as they approached the chasm, the ground beneath them began to quake more violently. The earth groaned and shook as if protesting their presence, but they had no choice but to move forward. They needed to reach the center of the chasm, to the heart of the power, before it consumed everything. "Stay close," Ilara ordered, her voice firm, though her heart was racing. They had come too far to turn back now. The closer they got to the center, the stronger the energy became. It was like a magnet pulling them in, forcing them to confront whatever ancient force lay beneath. Suddenly, the air grew thick with a strange, oppressive pressure. It was like the weight of the earth itself was pushing down on them. And for a moment, Ilara felt like she couldn't breathe. "Do you feel that?" Jacob asked, his voice tight with fear. Ilara nodded. "We're getting close. We need to be ready for anything." They reached the edge of the chasm, and the sight before them was nothing short of breathtaking. In the center of the chasm, suspended in a pool of molten energy, was a massive structure, an ancient machine, buried deep within the earth, its purpose a mystery. The structure was pulsating with energy, sending waves of power rippling through the air. It was this machine, Ilara realized, that had been causing the awakening of the earth. This was the source of the disturbance. "This is what we've been looking for," Misha said, her voice filled with awe. The records were right. This is the core. But even as Misha spoke, the ground trembled violently, and a low, rumbling growl filled the air. It was the sound of the earth itself, alive and angry. The machine was awakening, and with it, something else, something far older and more powerful than anything they had encountered. Suddenly, a massive tendril of energy shot out from the core, slamming into the ground in front of them with a force that sent the team sprawling. The ground cracked open, and the air was filled with a blinding light. Ilara struggled to get to her feet, her body battered and bruised from the impact. "Ilara," Jacob shouted, but she could barely hear him over the roar of the earth itself. They were too close. The earth was alive, and it was not going to let them stop it. With no time to lose, Ilara pushed herself to her feet, her eyes fixed on the heart of the machine. It was their only hope. If they didn't destroy it, if they didn't stop the core from feeding the planet's awakening, Earth, and everything they had known, would be lost. "Get to the core," Ilara shouted, her voice filled with determination. "We have to shut it down." The team moved forward, dodging the swirling tendrils of energy that lashed out at them. The air was thick with power, and the ground shook violently beneath their feet. They were running out of time. The Earth was no longer a planet. They had awoken something much more dangerous, something with the power to destroy everything. As they reached the core, the air grew even heavier, the energy around them almost suffocating. Ilara's heart raced in her chest, but she forced herself to focus. She needed to get to the control panel, the one thing that could stop this machine, stop the Earth's awakening. But as she reached out to touch the panel, a voice, a deep, resonant voice, spoke from the core. "You should not have come here," the voice boomed, echoing in her mind. "You are not meant to interfere." Ilara froze, her hand hovering just above the panel. The voice was not just a sound. It was a presence, a consciousness, alive in the core of the Earth. It was the planet itself, speaking to them. "We had no choice," Ilara said, her voice steady. "We had to stop this. We had to stop you." The voice chuckled, a low, rumbling sound that sent chills down her spine. "You cannot stop what is inevitable. Earth is awakening, and it will reclaim its place in the universe." The ground trembled again, and the energy in the air grew even more intense. Ilara could feel the pressure building, the weight of the Earth's power pushing against her. But then, something unexpected happened. The control panel before her flickered, and for a brief moment, the energy around them seemed to wane. It was their chance. Without hesitation, Ilara slammed her hand onto the panel, activating the shutdown sequence. The machine groaned, its energy fluctuating as the core began to power down. The tendrils of energy receded, and the ground beneath them stopped shaking. For a moment, There was silence. Then, slowly, the earth began to settle. The unnatural energy that had been pulsing through the air faded, and the glowing tendrils disappeared into the earth. The planet was no longer awake, no longer a living, breathing entity. It was just Earth. Ilara stood there, panting, her body battered and bruised but alive. The team gathered around her, exhausted but relieved. "We did it," Jacob said, his voice filled with disbelief. Ilara nodded, her eyes fixed on the now-still core. "We stopped it, but we'll never know what we truly unleashed. The Earth will never be the same." And she knew, deep down, that the consequences of what they had done would echo through history for generations to come. But for now, they had saved Earth, and that was enough.